Hello everyone, this is Mr. Abdulwahab again. We're working on the SAT practice test number 2. Again, I got this document from the College Board website where you could download it for free along with the answer keys and everything else that you need. In the previous video, we worked on the first reading text. We read the whole thing and we answered the first 10 questions that follow it. Now we're going to be tackling the second text, and questions 11 to 21 are based on the following passage on supplementary material. We'll be talking about this supplementary material at the end. Now, this passage is adapted from Ian King, Can Economics Be Ethical? 2013 by Prospect Publishing. Many people do the mistake of not actually reading the caption that precedes the text itself. I tend to believe that this is a huge mistake because it could actually give you a very good idea of what you're about to read, and it helps a lot to have an idea of what the text is going to talk about, especially in questions like what's the main idea, can you summarize, which are quite you could find them quite a lot when tackling an SAT exam. For example, by reading this, I already know that this passage is going to talk about economics and whether it's ethical or not. This alone helps me put a certain set of expectations before I even begin to read the text itself. Now, many students get intimidated by non-fictional texts. I mean, it's maybe not as fun as reading a piece of fiction, where fiction, of course, is a story, a made-up story, an imaginary story, and pieces of non-fiction tend to deal with actual information, facts, and the study of facts, and analyses of these facts. However, I'm actually gonna try to the best of my extent to show you that it's actually quite fun to deal with pieces of fiction, non-fiction, sorry. It's actually quite fun. It's as fun to deal with pieces of non-fiction as it is to deal with pieces of fiction. And you could actually deconstruct them into pieces just like you do with a piece of fiction. So without further ado, let's plunge straight into the text. Can economics be ethical? This is the question we're dealing with in this text. Can it be ethical? Again, one last notice before I begin. Does a student need to know anything about economics or the ethics of economics before reading the text? Of course not. I mean, you're not expected to know anything before you do the SAT exam. All you're required to do is to actually have a specific set of skills that allow you to read, analyze, and comprehend the text. That's everything. You don't need to have any background in economics. You don't need to have any background in philosophy or ethics. You just need to be able to read this text. So, recent debates about the economy have rediscovered the question, have asked the question again. Is that right? Well, right means more than just profits or efficiency. So we're not talking about making profits. We're not talking about efficiency of the economic plan. Let's see what they mean by right. Some argue that because the free markets allow for personal choice, so free markets allow personal choice, they are already ethical. So again, do you need to know what a free market is? Not exactly, but what you need to know from the text is that they allow for personal choice, and that some argue that since they do this, then they are already ethical. That means they're not doing anything wrong. Others have accepted the ethical critique and embraced corporate social responsibility. So on the other hand, some others have accepted the ethical critique and embraced, accepted, adhered to corporate social responsibility, that corporates or corporations should be held responsible for the decisions they make. At least that's what I get from this sentence. But before we can label any market outcome as immoral or sneer at economists who try to put a price on being ethical, we need to be clear on what we're talking about. So before we call things immoral or bad or sneer, basically look negatively at economists who try to put a price on being ethical, who judge people on trying to be ethical, we need to be clear on what we're talking about. Let's see what the author means. There are different views on where ethics should apply when someone makes an economic decision. So there are different views, different opinions on where ethics apply when someone makes economic decisions. Consider Adam Smith. So our first example in the text is Adam Smith. Again, according to the topic sentence in this paragraph, this is going to be one of the views, I assume. Consider Adam Smith, widely regarded as the founder of modern economics. He was a moral philosopher. So he was a thinker who dwelt on questions of morality, ethics, which things are right, which things are wrong. And he believed that sympathy for others was the basis for ethics. We would call it empathy nowadays. Basically, empathy is sympathy for others or feeling for others or feeling with others. But one of his key insights, one of his key ideas in The Wealth of Nations was that acting on this empathy could be counterproductive. Now, whenever you have words in italics, that means that the author is referring to a book, maybe a movie or a magazine, and this is the name of the book or the movie or the magazine or whatever the published material is. So one of his key ideas in his book was that acting on this empathy, on this feeling for others or with others, could be counterproductive. It could be harmful. He observed people becoming better off when they put their own empathy aside. So he saw that when people did not care about others, they were better off and interacted in a self-interested way. So when people act in a self-interested way, then they are actually better off. Smith justifies selfish behavior by the outcome. So basically, Adam Smith's idea says that if you act in a selfish way or if you care about yourself more than others, and we can judge whether this is a good thing or a bad thing by the outcome, the result. If it bears good results, then whatever you're doing is ethical. If the outcome is bad, then whatever you're doing is not ethical or immoral. Whenever planners use cost-benefit analysis to justify a new railway line, or someone retrains to boost his or her earning power, or a shopper buys one to get one free, they are using the same approach. Basically, cost-benefit analysis is when you take into consideration the cost, how much you're going to pay for it, and the benefit, what you're going to get in return. And if the benefit outweighs the cost, then this is a good purchase, we should call it. Empathizing with someone and seeking an outcome that makes that person as well off as possible, although the person they are empathizing with may be themselves in the future. So that's his approach. That's what he believes. It's all about the outcome, seeking an outcome that makes that person as well off as possible. So that's one of the views presented in the text so far. Instead of judging consequences, Aristotle said ethics was about having the right character. So now here's another view that some economists could use to actually study whether something is ethical or not in economics, and that's all about having the right character. Let's see what the second point of view actually means. Displaying, showing, or behaving on virtues, good qualities like courage and honesty. It is a view put into practice whenever business leaders are chosen for their good character. But it is a hard philosophy to teach. Just how much loyalty? So, the writer here is trying to tell us that this philosophy is hard to implement and hard to teach. Just how much loyalty should you show to a manufacturer that keeps losing money? I mean, if you're loyal to a certain product, you always buy it, or you're loyal to a certain manufacturer or producer, but he keeps on losing money. How loyal should you be to that person? Should you give him all of your money? Or should you give him none? Should you just act in a separated or basically in an unattached way towards this manufacturer? Show too little care, too little loyalty, and you're a greed is good corporate raider. And basically you show greed. Too much and you're wasting money on unproductive capital. If you show too much loyalty, then basically you're wasting your money on capital or products that are unproductive. Aristotle thought that there was a golden mean, that there is a middle way basically. A middle way between the two extremes of being too loyal and disloyal. And finding it was a matter of fine judgment. Being able to find this golden mean was a matter of fine, good, wise judgment. But if ethics is about character, it's not clear what those characteristics should be. It's not even clear what those qualities should be, if it is about character, as Aristotle says. So far we have two ideas, two approaches to studying or knowing whether certain economic ideas are ethical or not. We judge them by the outcome, according to Adam Smith, or there are a certain set of values or characteristics that we should adhere to, according or as Aristotle says. So let's move on. There is yet another approach. So here we have our third view. Instead of basing ethics in character or the consequences of actions, in character as Aristotle said, or the consequences as Adam Smith said, we can focus on our actions themselves. We can focus on the action itself. From this perspective, from this point of view, some things are right, some wrong. So we're judging actions here. Some actions are right, some actions are ethical, and some are not. We should buy fair trade goods. We shouldn't tell lies in advertisements. So those are some examples of some things that we should and we shouldn't do. Ethics becomes a list of commandments, a catalog of do's and don'ts. When a finance official refuses to devalue a currency because they have promised not to, they are defining ethics this way. According to this approach, devaluation can still be bad, even if it would make everybody better off. Basically, it's not about the consequence. Even if devaluation could make everybody better off, if it's considered a bad action, if it's not done, if it's among the don'ts, then you just don't do it because it's something bad that you shouldn't do, or the action is described as being a bad action. Many moral dilemmas arise when these three versions pull in different directions, but clashes, conflicts, disagreements are not inevitable. So there will be disagreements or clashes. So clashes are not inevitable. They're gonna happen. Take fair trade coffee. Again, they're mentioning fair trade, which was mentioned before here. Fair trade. Should we know what fair trade is? I mean, as long as the text doesn't tell us what it is, we don't need to worry about it. But let's read. So take fair trade coffee. Coffee that is sold with a certification that indicates that the farmers and workers who produced it were paid a fair wage. So basically, fair trade coffee means that this coffee was produced by people who were paid a fair wage. It wasn't produced by, say, slavery or child labor. For example, buying it might have good consequences, be virtuous, and also be the right way to act in a flawed market. So, buying fair trade coffee can be a good thing according to Adam Smith, according to Aristotle, and according to, of course, the third viewpoint presented here in this paragraph. Common ground like this suggests, common ground when these views agree, suggests that even without agreement on where ethics applies, ethical economics is still possible. So we are still able to do ethical economics, economics which is ethical, good, moral. That's, of course, where we have common grounds. Whenever we feel queasy, uncomfortable about perfect competitive markets, the problem is often based in a phony, false conception of people, in our false idea of people. The model of man, the idea of man, on which classical economics is based, the classical theory of economics, an entirely rational and selfish being is a parody. This is a false concept of people, of man. It's basically what the author is saying, that the idea that man is rational and selfish is actually unrealistic. As John Stuart Mill, the philosopher who pioneered the model, accepted, most people, even economists now accept that this economic man is a fiction, is not real. The idea that we are rational, selfish beings is not real. We behave like a herd. So this is the, according to the author, of course, the more logical approach, or the approach that makes more sense when studying human beings in interaction with economics. We fear losses more than we hope for gains. So we have this issue of feelings, emotions. They mess with our decisions. Rarely can our brains process all the relevant facts. We rarely take into consideration all the facts. Most of the time, we are influenced by our fear of losing. These human quirks, qualities, these human tendencies, mean we can never make purely rational decisions, that we can't make purely rational decisions. Our decisions are affected by our emotions, our fear of losses, and our hope for gains. A new wave of behavioral economists, aided by neuroscientists, is trying to understand our psychology. They're trying to understand the way we think. Who? A new wave of behavioral economists who study the behavior of human beings regarding economics. And they are helped by neuroscientists, scientists who study the neurological system, or basically the nerve system, both alone and in groups. So to understand the psychology of people alone, individually, and in groups. So they can anticipate, expect our decisions in the marketplace more accurately. So they're doing this to try to anticipate or expect what decisions people would make in the marketplace in a more accurate or precise way. But psychology can also help us understand why we react in disgust at economic injustice, or accept a moral law as universal, why we accept certain laws as universal, which means that the relatively new science of human behavior might also define ethics for us. Ethical economics would then emerge from one of the least likely places, economists themselves. So basically, in the end, ethical economics, basically the people who will decide whether economics are ethical or not will be the economists themselves, what they happen to agree on. And what the findings that they might come across according to the study made by the new wave of behavioral economists aided by the neuroscientists who are trying to understand our psychology when we are acting alone or in groups. So that's the end of the text, and now we have a graph. If you take a look at the graph, it says regular coffee profits compared to fair trade coffee profits in Tanzania. So we have year 2000 to 2008, amount US cents per pound. So this is about how much money was made from coffee from 2000 to 2008, from 20 to 160 cents per pound. The dotted line or the dashed line with the empty small circles refers to fair trade coffee, which is in Tanzania. So the fair trade coffee is symbolized on the graph by the dashed line, and the regular coffee is symbolized by the bold line, which is unseparated or a one complete line. Both of them are profits in Tanzania. So let's take a look at the questions now. The main purpose of the passage is to. So we've read the passage, we've examined the whole thing. Now let's take a look at the questions. The main purpose of the passage. What's the main purpose here? Consider an ethical dilemma posed by cost-benefit analysis. Is this the main purpose of the passage? Is this the main aim of the passage, which is to consider an ethical problem posed or put forward by cost-benefit analysis? Now, this was mentioned, but that wasn't the main purpose of the passage. It was one of the ideas mentioned. If you go back through the passage, this is made very clear, so it's not A. Describe a psychology study of ethical economic behavior. It doesn't describe a psychology study. That's not the main purpose of the passage, to describe a psychology study. Argue that the free market prohibits ethical economics. Well, actually, some people argue that free market actually allows for ethical economics since it allows for personal choice, so it's not C. Examine ways of evaluating the ethics of economics. Well, yes, I mean, at the beginning of the text, it said that there are many views. I mean, if we go back to the text, there are different views on where ethics should apply when someone makes an economic decision. And then we were presented with 3 different views, the one by Adam Smith, Aristotle, and the third one. So D is the best answer for this question. Now, in the passage, the author anticipates which of the following objections to criticizing the ethics of free markets. It's a very wordy question, but you should expect questions like these on the SAT. Don't freak out, I might say. Basically, what they're trying to tell us is that the author anticipates, expects, or replies to which of the following objections or critiques to the ethics of free markets. That Smith's association of free markets with ethical behavior still applies today? Well, not actually. Free markets are the best way to generate high profits, so ethics are a secondary consideration. Not exactly as well. They're not a secondary consideration. This was made clear throughout the text. And profit wasn't the main focus. Free markets are ethical because they are made possible by devalued currency. Again, this wasn't mentioned in the text. Free markets were mentioned. Devaluing currency was mentioned, but they were never mentioned in association with each other. And free markets were never said to be ethical because they are made possible by devalued currency. Free markets are ethical because they enable individuals to make choices. Well, definitely our answer. Again, why? Because this is what the text said. If you go back to the text, it is mentioned that some argue that because, and here he anticipates this, he mentions this objection right at the beginning. Some argue that because the free markets allow for personal choice, they are already ethical. So he already anticipated this retort or this reply. This is our best answer. Which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? Again, we used this piece of the text, lines 4 and 5. So I don't even need, again, to go through the rest and waste my time. Of course, when you're going through the SAT, you'll be reading and working and analyzing much faster than this. But there are things that you don't need to actually waste time on. I mean, if you already know why you answered the first question, you already have your answer for the second. And you almost always, on every text of the SAT, you'll have a question asking you to make a judgment and then follow it up with evidence. Where's the textual evidence that supports this answer? And this is, again, is like killing two birds with one stone. You can get two correct answers for the hard work of finding one. Moving on. As used in line 6, embraced most nearly means. Again, in questions like these where you have quotations right from the text and you need to know how this word was used in context, then it is very I encourage you actually to go back to the text in this situation. So line 6, go back to line 6. Here's line 6. Others have accepted the ethical critique and embraced. So this is almost like accepted or adopted. Corporate social responsibility. Accepted, adopted, or adhered to. Lovingly held. Well, no one's holding anyone. Readily adopted. Sounds good. Eagerly hugged. Again, no one's hugging anyone. Reluctantly used. Nothing is being used. It's an idea and people are adopting or accepting or adhering to it. So B is our best answer. The main purpose of the fifth paragraph, lines 45 to 56, is to, let's just check 45, what the paragraph 45 to 56 is. So it's the third paragraph that discusses the third point of view, which says basically that we should judge actions by themselves. We should judge whether something is ethical or not based on the action itself. We should have a catalog of do's and don'ts. So let's take a look at the options we have. The main purpose of the fifth paragraph, lines 45 to 56, is to develop a counter-argument to the claim that greed is good. Again, going back to the paragraph, that's not what it says. It's just, and it's not a counter-argument. There is no counter-argument. There's just a third point of view to the added to the two previous ones. Provide support for the idea that ethics is about character. Well, actually, again, no, because it doesn't support this idea. It just provides a new idea. Describe a third approach to defining ethical economics. Sounds very good and sounds very familiar. Illustrate that one's actions are a result of one's character. Well, it doesn't actually say that. I mean, you could have a certain character, certain values, but you could be acting in opposition to those values. So you could have good actions coming out of bad people in a sense. As used in line 58, clashes most nearly means conflicts, mismatches, collisions, brawls. Again, let's go back to line 58, read the sentence where clashes was used, and give our answer. 55, 56, 57, here's 58. So many moral dilemmas arise when these three versions pull in different directions. So each one of those versions is pulling in its favor. But clashes are not inevitable. Clashes are not inevitable. And the word clashes itself is not, I wouldn't say it's among the SAT tough words. It's a pretty obvious word. Clashes or conflicts are inevitable. We're not talking about mismatches. We're not trying to match things up, and they're not lining evenly across each other. We're not talking about collisions. I mean, the word collisions is used when two things collide physically with each other. Brawls are fights. No one is fighting. So, conflicts. Which choice best supports the author's claim that there is common ground shared by the different approaches to ethics described in the passage? So we need to find the textual evidence that supports the claim that there is common ground or things in common shared by different approaches, by the different views to ethics which are described in the passage, all three of them. Now, in this question, you would have to go back to the text and check specifically what these ones would say, because this is not evidence to a previous question. This is a question all on its own. But I think we have a fairly good idea of where we would find the answer to this one. But in any case, 11 to 12. So 11 to 12. There are different views on where ethics should apply when someone makes an economic decision. Well, this doesn't talk about common grounds, it just says that there are different views on where ethics should apply when someone makes an economic decision, that there are different ways. Then we go, so this is not our answer. This is not our answer. Lines 47 to 50. 47 to 50. So from this perspective, some things are right, some wrong. We should buy fair trade goods. We should utilize in advertisements. This is expanding on the idea or the view presented in this paragraph. So again, no common grounds are being mentioned. Lines 59 to 64. 59 to 64. Take fair trade coffee, which is sold with a certification that indicates farmers and workers who produce it were paid a fair wage. For example, buying it might have good consequences, be virtuous, and also be the right way to act in a flawed market. Well, this example of fair trade coffee actually shows us where the three different views actually meet and agree with each other on something that is considered good or virtuous or acting in the right way. So this does show an example of common grounds between all three different views. So far, C looks like the right answer. But let's check 75 to 77. 75 to 77. We behave like a herd. We fear losses more than we hope for gains. Rarely can our brains process all the relevant facts. Again, no common ground is presented in this extract from the text. So D is not our answer. The best answer is in fact C. C is our best answer, is our best answer. I'm actually gonna erase this so that I could draw a better line. So C is our best answer. Question number 18. The main idea of the final paragraph is that, again, the final paragraph that talks about the study of psychologists, the psychology study made by a new wave of behavioral economists and who are aided by neuroscientists. Let's take a look at the options we have. The main idea of the final paragraph is that human quirks, human tendencies, make it difficult to predict people's ethical decisions accurately. Human quirks make it difficult to predict people's ethical decisions accurately. Let's see in what context the word quirks means. These human quirks mean we can never make purely irrational decisions. So the quirks, which are basically our emotions, fear of losing and hoping for gain, these quirks are mentioned to indicate that we can never be purely rational or make purely rational decisions. So, but it's not saying that it is making it difficult to predict people's ethical decisions accurately. It's not, and it's not the main idea of the final paragraph, of course. It's not the main focus of the paragraph. People universally react with disgust when faced with economic injustice. This was mentioned in the text, of course, but it's definitely, again, not the main focus of the paragraph. Understanding human psychology may help to define ethics in economics. Well, why does this sound good? Because, again, the last paragraph is examining human psychology, and that understanding it better could actually help us define ethics, understand what is ethical and what is not in economics. So this looks good. Let's check D. economists themselves will be responsible for reforming the free market. Well, again, it doesn't actually say this. They're not going to reform the free market, but they're going to be responsible for deciding what would be ethical economics. They would have a huge part to play in deciding what ethical economics will be like. So the answer is not D. Our answer is definitely C. Data in the graph about per ground coffee profits in Tanzania most strongly support which of the following statements? Which of the following statements is supported by the graph? A. Fairtrade coffee consistently earned greater profits than regular coffee earned. Let's go back to the graph. Again, this is Fairtrade coffee, and this is regular coffee. And yes, Fairtrade coffee earned much more than regular coffee. So A looks good. The profits earned from regular coffee did not fluctuate. Well, actually they did. Look at the fluctuations. They were high in 2000. They went down all through to 2004, where they increased and they decreased a bit, and then up they went. So there is fluctuation. Fairtrade coffee profits increased between 2004 and 2006. 2004, 2006, not much change. Actually, it's still the same. So C is wrong. Fairtrade and regular coffee were earning equal profits by 2008. Let's check. 2008. See this? This huge space indicates that no, they were not earning the same. They were not earning the same. So yes, A is our correct answer. Data in the graph indicate that the greatest difference between per pound profits from Fairtrade coffee and those from regular coffee occurred during which period? During which period did the profits from both products were actually or had the greatest difference? So let's go back. The options we have are 2000 to 2002, 2002 to 2004, 2004 to 2005, 2006 to 2008. So let's check. 2000 to 2002. Now, in 2000, it was actually quite high. So the difference became bigger as we went closer to 2002, but the average difference would actually level out the low value reached, or the low amount of profit reached by 2002. From 2002 and 4, now this seems to be the lowest level that the line or the amount of profit made by regular coffee. This seems to be the period where they made the least amount of money. So this is the least it got. So and the difference from this amount of money made to this is actually much bigger, and it's much more consistent than any other value we could study from any other period of time, where it's actually higher, so the difference is less. So our best answer is 2002 to 2004. 21. Data in the graph provide most direct support for which idea in the passage? The data in the graph. That's acting on empathy can be counterproductive. Well, if you think about it, empathy wasn't actually mentioned much in the graph. It was just displaying two lines indicating coffee sold by Fairtrade and regular coffee, which we don't know whether it's manufacturers or producers or the farmers working on it were produced fair wage or not. So the graph doesn't talk to us about empathy, and that empathy can be counterproductive. It's actually, if we were to empathize, that means we're feeling with the workers, we're trying to buy Fairtrade coffee, so that it could be counterproductive. Actually, it was productive. People are being empathetic creatures. We are exhibiting empathy, and it's being productive. It's making more money. Ethical economics is defined by character. Well, again, this is not what the graph talks about. Not at all. Ethical economics is still possible. Well, this sounds good. Certainly because, again, fair trade coffee is making more money. It's being more productive than regular coffee. Uh, Ethical economics is still possible because people basically still care. People fear losses more than they hope for gains. Again, this has nothing to do with the graph itself. So our best answer is, in fact, C. And those are all the questions. Now, I really hope you enjoyed this take on the text, which sounds like an academic, scientific text with, you know, almost philosophical ideas being discussed in economic theory. But again, we didn't need any background in economics. I don't have any background in economics. I mean, I know a little bit, but I mean nothing. I wouldn't call myself an economist at all. I've never studied economics. And I think I've been able to work with this text in a very efficient manner. Let's check our answers. So this is practice test 2. Here are the answers. So let's check and see how we did. So we're doing questions 11 to 21. 11 to 21. So we got 11 correct. That's D. 12 is D and 13 is A. 12 is D, 13 is A. 14 and 15. 14 is B, 15 is C. So 14 is B and 15 is in fact C. 16 is A and 17 is C. 16 is A and 17 is C. Let's check the rest. 18 and 19. 18 is C and 19 is A. 18 is C and 19 is A. 20 and 21. 20 is B, 21 is C, 20 is B, and 21 is C. And of course, you can get the answer key and the test, the exam itself from the College Board website. I've included the link in the comment, in the caption below the video, so you could actually go to the website and download it and try to do this all by yourselves. I hope I was able to help anyone who's watching this video. I'm trying to show as many students as possible that this is not impossible, that working with the SAT is not hard, is not as hard as some people make it seem. This new SAT is much more accessible than many people think, and I think a lot of people could actually get really high grades on it, and it would be a complete waste if they didn't. So if you liked what you saw, if you like my approach to how I solve these questions, if I'm helping you at all, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends so that we could benefit as many people as possible. And stay tuned for some more videos on the SAT and how to solve it. We're going to be going through all the reading texts available from the College Board website. We're going to be going through each and every one of them, and I really hope that a lot of people will benefit from this. And if you have any questions, if you have any critiques, if there's anything that you don't like about the way I'm explaining these texts, please let me know. I would love to help and correct or amend my methods. So please leave your comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned for some more videos on the SAT. Thank you very much.